So here we have a chapter that deals with all kinds of different aspects of daily life. Deuteronomy 22:1, You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep being driven away or stolen, and hide yourself from your duty to help them. You shall surely take them back to your brother. 22:2, And if your brother, the owner, is not near you, or if you do not know who he is, you shall bring the animal to your house, and it shall be with you until your brother comes looking for it. Then you shall restore it to him. So the people of Israel, they have been down in Egypt for generations, learning the ways of the Egyptian. I'm sure they picked up a lot of different things as far as morals and character and ways to act. And many of them were contrary to the Lord God. And through this exodus and through this journey, they have been re-educated to take on better traits from the Lord, rather than traits from devils and demons and the ungodly. So here we have a commandment relating to the ethics and the relationship to one's neighbor. If they see them suffering, they see this animal here, that it is misplaced, and they have recovered it, they need to return it to their neighbor and not take it for their own property. And if they don't know whose it is, they are to take stewardship of it and look after it until that neighbor comes inquiring, or they get word of whosever animal this is, to be able to return it to them. In effect, they are doing to their neighbor, which, if the event happened to themselves, they would want that person to do. And that's awesome. Deuteronomy 22:3, And so shall you do with his donkey or his garment, or with anything which your brother has lost and you have found. You shall not hide from your duty concerning them. So we see this rule here now expanding to encompass more. We have the donkey, which is now an unclean animal, as well as clothing. And from the way that it is written, it sounds like it expands to everything. That this is a duty to return the lost or stolen items. It's also interesting to note that it is not something to be concealed or something to be hidden, for that could be a method of deception where the item is received and it will be returned if they ask. But if they never know that you have it, how would they know to ask for it? So that has been vetoed in this, that the matter is not concealed. Deuteronomy 22:4, You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fall down by the way, and hide from your duty concerning them. You shall surely help him to lift them up again. So here we have an escalation in the burden that one is to take when it comes to being a good neighbor and helping their neighbor out. Previously, it was simply taking stewardship of the animal or returning it back to the owner. But now we got ourselves some hard labor. This donkey, this ox, it's fallen down and needs help up. And those animals are heavy, so it might actually be a decent amount of work. And if one was all dressed up and in nice clothing, they might get dirty. But that was the good thing to do. That was the right thing to do, was to help out the neighbor that was struggling with their animal and helping it be corrected so that they can be on their way. To put this into a more modern context, it would be like finding somebody on the side of the road with a flat tire and going to help them change the tire, or maybe help getting them out of the ditch or something. Maybe there was a snowstorm, they kind of went off the road a little bit and they need someone to help push the vehicle to get it out of the ditch. So not insignificant, not a crazy amount either, but certainly an inconvenience. But to that person, to help them out, you would really make their day. And if you were the owner here of this animal that fell down and you see your neighbor come by and he goes and helps you, doesn't ask for anything in return or anything, just wants to do the right thing, well, that's a much better society to live in, I would think. Deuteronomy 22:5. The woman shall not wear that which pertains to a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are an abomination to the Lord your God. It's kind of interesting how over time certain Bible verses become more offensive to whatever the current zeitgeist is. Now the question is this about fashion, or is it about taking on the identity of a different gender? Fashion is something that changes with time, and clothing has changed a lot with time. At this time period when Moses is speaking to the Israelites, it's possible that the trouser was not invented yet, let alone women started wearing them. And if you look at the pants that women wear versus the pants that men wear, generally there is a stylistic difference to them even today. I mean, the shapes of the bone structure and the fat distribution and the muscle mass is different, so clothing is generally different anyway, but that's besides the point. So I would make the case that this is not about fashion, but it is about assuming the gender identity of the other gender. Of course, I don't like using these words anymore because they have been corrupted in the modern vernacular, and they like to massage definitions to the point of removing the effectiveness of language, but it is what it is. Deuteronomy 22:6. If a bird's nest should chance to be before you in the way, in any tree, or on the ground with young ones or eggs, and the mother bird is sitting on the young or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother bird with the young. 22:7. You shall surely let the mother bird go, and take only the young, that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days. So this verse here is similar to what we've seen previously when it came to the collecting of fruit, or in the event of attacking a city and making siege equipment from wood and not using the wood from trees that produced fruit. If the person here takes the eggs and slays the bird, well, that's the end of those birds. It would be better to simply take the eggs, if it's possible, and let the bird go so the bird can lay more eggs, and then they can collect more eggs down the road. It is simply a verse referring to the idea of allowing nature's bounty to sustain them, and how taking everything is disadvantageous in the long term. Deuteronomy 22:8. When you build a new house, then you shall put a railing around your flat roof, so that no one may fall from there and bring guilt of blood upon your house. We don't really have extensive building codes here in the Old Testament, for building materials would change over time and change in the location which the people of Israel were dwelling in. This is actually a subject that I find incredibly interesting when it comes to the way that dwellings are made in different countries around the world, and what materials are used to make them, and what standards are used for ascertaining the safety of a given home. But I'm not going to nerd out on that today. What we have here is describing the bare minimum, that if they have a roof that somebody can fall off of and get hurt, well, then you want to have a railing on that roof so people don't fall off and get hurt or killed. Because if there's a shedding of blood, well, then there's a guilt to be paid. And it would be unfortunate to have to run to the city of refuge because a person fell off your house. Deuteronomy 22:9. You shall not plant your vineyard with two kinds of seed, lest the whole crop be forfeited under this ban. The seed which you have sown and the yield of the vineyard forfeit to the sanctuary. So there's a couple ways that this could be done. One would be mixing the seeds ahead of time and then planting them in rows and having a diverse crop grow as a result. The other way would be to plant in rows and then maybe alternate between two different types of seed. So in the middle there would be something different than on the left and the right. The problem that would arise would be when it comes to harvest. For the first fruits are to be the Lord's, and if there's different things coming to fruition at different times, that makes that very challenging to do, and it would be hard to keep track of. So maybe it's just considered a little bit of a defilement, or some aspects of the unevenly yoked, that all of it is supposed to kind of be ready at the same time, and by having some stuff ready and other stuff not, it kind of throws everything off. So we're going to see some more examples of unevenly yoked later on, and that's kind of a recurring theme throughout the Old and New Testament. Deuteronomy 22:10, you shall not plow with an ox, a clean animal, and a donkey, unclean, together. So here we have the actual example of the unevenly yoked. So an ox and a donkey are two very different animals when it comes to strength. So if they were plowing a field and they put a yoke between an ox and a donkey and then tie the plow to it, the ox is significantly stronger than the donkey. So it would be pulling way more than the donkey, and the donkey would kind of be left behind, and it would be very inefficient. So this is not good for the ox because it has to do all the work, and it's not good for the donkey because it's being dragged by the ox. It would be similar to trying to drive a car with the left side tires being flat. It would be impossible to maneuver and would be damaging to the unit overall. This idea is used metaphorically for many things, and probably the most notable is in the New Testament when it comes to a believer being married to a non-believer. This is something that often doesn't end well and can lead to quite a bit of strife. But with the nature of this metaphor, it can be applied to many different things, as we saw previously with the different types of seed being planted. Deuteronomy 22:11, you shall not wear a garment of mingled stuff, wool and linen together. So this was written in a time before pre-shrunk jeans were invented. So oftentimes clothing, when they were washed, they would shrink. And different cloth types would shrink by different amounts. So mixing different types of cloth together would create very weak garments. And it would be quite wasteful. So there's an idea that way. Cloth at this time was very valuable. Some of it was handmade, and the tools used to make it were very primitive. The loom was in its infancy, if they had one at all. After looking at several commentaries, I don't know if we truly understand what this verse is about. And perhaps it is something about the character of the Israelite and how they were to act, and not be overdressed and making idols out of their clothing. It's very hard to say. Deuteronomy 22:12, you shall make yourself tassels on the four corners of your cloak, with which you cover yourself. So this is almost like a uniform, that the people of Israel had to be dressed in a particular way, and having these tassels or laces or fringes or strings attached to their clothing made it possible for them to tell at a distance who was a brother and who was an Israelite versus those that were foreigners or strangers in the land. I'm sure they served their purpose and they were there for a reason. And we even see them showing up in the New Testament as well. Deuteronomy 22:13, if any man takes a wife and goes into her, and then scorns her. So the Israelites placed a great deal of significance on the virginity of their wives, for this was one of the few ways, especially back then, for determining whether or not a child that was born was of the husband. They did not have DNA testing at that time, and it was probably very hard to determine whether or not a child was their own. And this verse here is looking at the idea of a man getting married and engaging with relations with his wife, but finding out that she was not exactly the way that he believed her to be, and causing a scorn that way. In the King James, it uses the word hated. Deuteronomy 22:14, and charges her with shameful things, and gives her an evil reputation, and says, I took this woman, but when I came to her, I did not find in her the token of a virgin. 22:15, then the father of the young woman and her mother shall get and bring out the token of her virginity to the elders of the city at the gate. So this is a very serious charge made against this woman, and by extension her family. This is something very shameful. But it is not over. There is a rebuttal to this. So the parents of this woman bring forth a blood-stained wedding garment to prove that she was a virgin when she married this man. This could be the sheet in which they engaged in intercourse on. For when the womb is first open, it bleeds. So they bring this garment to the elders, and they're able to ascertain the truth of this matter. Deuteronomy 22:16, and the father shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as wife, but he hates and spurns her. 22:17, and behold, he has made shameful charges against her, saying, I found not in your daughter the evidence of her virginity, and yet these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity, and they shall spread the garment before the elders of the city. So this man here, this father, he has given his daughter in good faith to this man, and he does not appreciate her to be treated this way. And he brings proof of this matter to show the elders so that they know what has transpired. Deuteronomy 22:18, and the elders of that city shall take the man and rebuke and whip him. So the elders of the city, they verify what has transpired, and as a result, they punish this man for his slander against this woman, and by extension her family. And they maybe give him a little bit of a hard time, so that he will have greater understanding. Deuteronomy 22:19, and they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought an evil name upon a virgin of Israel, and she shall be his wife. He may not divorce her all his days. To extend this punishment, this man is also being fined 100 shekels of silver to be paid to the father of the bride. And the motives for this are interesting, because if he was unhappy with his wife, he should have just divorced her. But because he slandered her and brought this charge against her, he is now forbidden from divorcing her. So he's really not getting what he wants. And this woman now is going to be protected, and she is no longer going to be able to be cast out. Deuteronomy 22:20, but if it is true that the evidence of virginity were not found in the young woman. 22:21, then they shall bring her to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her to death, because she has wrought criminal folly in Israel by playing the harlot in her father's house. So you shall put away the evil from among you. This matter is taken very seriously, and if the evidence is not produced, well, then she is guilty of playing the harlot, and we see her brought to her father's house before being taken out to be stoned to death. For she has dishonored her father's house by her harlotry, and as a result is going to be receiving the death penalty. So this goes beyond simply the idea of fornication, but more likely has something to do with the idea of her presenting herself as something that she was not to her potential husband, saying that she was of purity when she was not. And this deception is much greater than the simple act of intercourse outside of marriage. Deuteronomy 22:22. If a man is found lying with another man's wife, they shall both die, the man who lay with the woman and the woman. So you shall purge the evil from Israel. So now we are going to look at several different types of relations, different types of interactions, and the outcomes of them, or punishments to them. And here we have a man laying with a married woman. And it appears that she wasn't really resisting or anything, that this was a mutual event or a consensual act. And as a result, both parties are to be killed. Adultery is not permissible in God's law, and the punishment is very severe, and it hurts all the parties involved. Deuteronomy 22:23. If a maiden who is a virgin is engaged to be married, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her. So here we have an example. We have a woman here, a virgin. She's betrothed, she's engaged, she's supposed to be getting married, but she's engaging with relations with somebody else within the premises of the city, where it would be reasonable that she could yell or scream or fight back and get help so that this event would not occur. But due to her lack of resistance, it is interpreted as consent. Deuteronomy 22:24. Then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city, and shall stone them to death, the young woman because she did not cry for help, though she was in the city, and the man because he has violated his neighbor's promised wife. So shall you put away evil from among you. So the cities were probably different than the cities of today, and the building materials were probably different as well, so noise would be easier heard by other people, and perhaps people were not so desensitized so that they would pick up on screams and come to the aid of a person, whereas in the modern day that is probably less likely to occur in modern cities. There's a lot of crazy people out there. So maybe there is some validation as to the expectation that she cries out for help and somebody would actually come to help. In any case, we see that both of them are being sentenced to death. And here we have them going out from the city gate. So this is different than what we saw previously, because it wasn't a dishonoring of her father's house, but a dishonoring of Israel, the nation. So the point of reference is a little bit different. It's also quite interesting that this is being treated the same as if she was already married, and how a lot of this comes down to the fact that she was betrothed. So she was promised to be married, and as a result, this is breaking that promise. So this man is in violation of that. Deuteronomy 22:25. But if the man finds the betrothed maiden in the open country, and the man seizes her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. So in the event that this woman here is taken advantage of in a physical, intimate sense by force out in the field where there is no witnesses, no one that she can cry out for help, there is no expectation of her being rescued, and she is not expected to be able to fight back to the point of fighting this man off and preventing this event from occurring. She is the victim here, and in this case and in this circumstance, she is not guilty. She is blameless in this event, or it's not provable that she consented, and as a result, only the man is sentenced to death. But if you think about it, if there is no witnesses, she would have to come forth and tell someone about what transpired in order to bring this charge against this man. So that would prove, at least to some extent, that she did not want that to happen, and she is not being punished for being a victim of this crime. Deuteronomy 22:26. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. She has committed no sin punishable by death, for this is as when a man attacks and slays his neighbor. So this crime is considered to be on the same level as murder, a capital crime, and something that is irredeemable. And she is not punished for being the victim. Deuteronomy 22:27. For he came upon her in the open country, and the betrothed girl cried out, but there was no one to save her. This is a very unfortunate thing to happen, and it shouldn't happen, and the punishment reflects the crime with the severity. Deuteronomy 22:28. If a man finds a girl who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found. 22:29. Then the man who lies with her shall give to the girl's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has violated her. He may not divorce her all his days. So now we have a different circumstance. We have a woman that is not betrothed. She's not engaged. She is free. And she is seduced by this man. And they engage in consensual premarital intercourse. And as a result, he needs to take responsibility and marry her. Throughout history and in many cultures, this was quite common. And until recently, it was used in the Western world as well. There was something referred to as a shotgun wedding, a wedding that would occur after a pregnancy occurred, in which the man was forced, sometimes figuratively, sometimes literally, under threat of gunpoint, to be married to this woman, to take responsibility and to make sure that this child is not born out of wedlock. So there was many instances of a wedding occurring and a child being born not very long after. So there is also a bride price to be paid, in which the man pays the 50 shekels of silver to his new father-in-law. This may be for the inconvenience of what has transpired here, or maybe it's money to be set away in case something happens. Although he is now going to be forbidden from divorcing this woman because of the special circumstances in which they became engaged and married. Deuteronomy 22:30. A man shall not take his father's former wife, nor shall he uncover her who belongs to his father. So this is probably not in reference to incest, but is more a reference to the idea of uncovering the father's nakedness. So if this man here has relations with his stepmother, it would be exposing his father's nakedness. The same could be said with the second portion of discovering his father's skirt or exposing his father's nakedness. So that would be a more direct route. And this is also something that is not permissible.